Boom, boom. Screen is shared. I like to journal. Does anybody here journal? Anybody out there in TV land? Anybody journal on a regular basis? No one. Okay. We're going to start today with some journaling. So Colin Powell once said, a dream doesn't become reality through magic. It takes sweat, determination, and hard work. Those of you who are here know that, right? You made it to this place in your life. You have had a dream, and you have worked hard, and you have realized that dream. So what I want you to do right now is take out some paper. Take out your notebook, and I want you to write down, and a pen, a writing utensil of some sort. You could also use, maybe you carved a pencil out of a tree once and put some lead in it, and you now have it with you. You can use that. What I want you to do is I want you to take out that pen and paper, and I would like for you to write down a dream or a vision that you have had. Maybe it's a recurring dream, right? Joseph had dreams. That's why we're talking about this today. Joseph had dreams, and so I want you right now to take some time to write down a dream that you have had. Oh, you're so good. Yes. And he was the chosen son, right? Not Esau. Jacob was the son that the Bible says was chosen by God. So it's important to know that that Jacob then had sons, right? And the youngest of his sons' name was what?
The youngest?
Yes, the youngest.
Benjamin.
What?
Benjamin.
Oh, sorry. Okay, not the youngest. The youngest.
Joseph.
Good. You got me, Sadie. Yes. Joseph, not Benjamin, not the youngest. Good, thank you. Okay, so Jacob, even before Joseph, had dreams. So Joseph's dad already had dreams. He had a dream that God came to him and said, you're chosen. And he also wrestled with God. And in this wrestling with God, he said, I will not let you go until you bless me. So he had to struggle for the blessing that he believed was his. And in this struggle, in the not letting go, he was transformed. Right? The angel of God touched his hip socket, but also in the midst of this struggle, Jacob's name was changed. This is symbolic, people. Right? As much as we might believe that literally Jacob wrestled with an angel, right? The story we know is symbolic because Jacob is renamed. And he's renamed Israel. And the name Israel means the one who struggles with God. And here's why. Because the story of this people is going to be marked by contention and strife. Contention and strife, not just among themselves, but also with God. Israel. The one who struggles with El is the word for God. So Israel's name symbolically means he who struggles with God. And we know, right, over and over again, we read about this idea of conflict and living at odds with those around, right? Interesting, I think, to then juxtapose this with the word Islam, right, which is the relationship we're looking at, that we've looked at over and over again between Israel and Islam, Judaism and Islam. Islam means to submit or to surrender with God, right? So we've got, on the one hand, an interpretation of wrestling or struggling with God. On the other, a surrender and submission to God. Interesting to know. And also we think about then this idea of living alongside rather than at odds with. But interestingly, right, in both languages, Hebrew and Arabic, this word, peace, we see is very similar. Shalom and salam. So what I want to do now is think about another dream that was realized, right? That we've talked about is connected to the strife or the conflict in the Middle East. Remember, and actually, Ivania, you spoke about this, right? The way in which apartheid in South Africa has been interpreted in ways that are similar to what's happening with Palestine and Israel today. So I want to think about this idea of forgiveness, right? Because one of the things that the text, at least according to Siebert, that this text is about is forgiveness. Right? That Joseph, who was sold by his brothers into slavery, chose to forgive him. Right? So I want to connect it specifically to apartheid because I want us to think about the ways in which Archbishop Desmond Tutu suggested that after apartheid, which was the racial segregation of white South Africans and black South Africans, right? That after this institutionalized racism that happened from the 40s to the 90s, right? So it only ended in the 90s. Again, institutionalized racism means that whites, right, the white South Africans were given privileges, right? They were given jobs, territory, opportunities that black South Africans were not given, and it was institutionalized. It was by law. And at the end of apartheid, right, and this is Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Tutu standing together at the end of apartheid, because Mandela fought for the end of apartheid. Tutu says, listen, what we need to do as black South Africans is forgive our white counterparts. We need to forgive them, because this is the only way forward. And I want us right now, because we're going to journal again, because it helps, I think. What I want us to do right now is I want us to reflect on the idea of forgiveness. Right? If this class is anything, I want it to get into you, right? I don't want it to just be cerebral or just these stories that we're learning and why, right? It's got to connect to your life. So I want us to read these quotes out loud, right? If this story is really about forgiveness, let's think about people who actually have in the world had to forgive someone who has wronged them, right? And Archbishop Tutu would be one of them. So can someone read that first one, forgiveness, out loud?
Forgiveness does not mean condoning what has been done. Forgiving means abandoning your right to pay back the perpetrator in his own way.
Good. Just as we read them, reflect. The next one. Can someone read the next one? Forgiving is not forgetting.
Forgiving is not forgetting, it's actually remembering and not using your right to pay it back. It's a second chance for a new beginning, and the remembering part is particularly important, especially if you don't want to repeat what happened.
It's not forgetting, it's remembering. Can someone read the next one? Forgiving and being reconciled to our enemies.
Forgiving and being reconciled to our enemies or our loved ones are not about pretending that things are other than they are. It is not about patting one another on the back and turning a blind eye to the wrong. True reconciliation exposes the awfulness, the abuse, the hurt, the truth. It even sometimes makes things worse. It is a risky undertaking, but in the end it is worthwhile, because in the end only an honest confrontation with reality can bring real healing. Superficial reconciliation can only bring superficial healing.
When the missionaries came to Africa, they had the Bible and we had the land. They said, let us pray. We closed our eyes, and when we opened them, we had the Bible and they had the land. This is what Archbishop Tutu is saying happened. That through the process of colonization and Christianization, right, and that collusion, what happened was the Bible was utilized in a way so as to oppress, dehumanize, and exploit. Now, hear this. Archbishop Tutu is a Christian. He is a minister, right? But what he's doing is he's critiquing the way the Bible and God were used for power. Do you guys hear what I'm saying? Someone say yes if you do. So some of what this class is trying to get into that gritty, nitty, nasty place, right? And shine a light on the things that have been done that are inhumane in the name of God, right? We learn from history that we don't learn from history. I want you guys, before I have you journal again, I want you to tell me right now, what do you think forgiveness is? Which one of these in particular resonates with you? The second one. Why?
If there's a problem, you're going to remember it, but you have the choice to fight back.
Okay. So touching upon this idea, right, of forgiving and the fact that it does not necessarily mean forgetting. That there's a way that, and this is the one, right, on remembering. Yes. there's a way that remembering actually becomes important. So we can forgive, but we don't have to forget. Remembering actually leads us into transformation. Other thoughts on this one? Agree, disagree? What do you guys think? Agree. Okay, good. Anybody else want to share? How about we do this? Let's do this, and then we'll ask if anyone wants to share. We're going to get a little deeper, you guys. Moving from dreams into forgiveness. So this is what I want us to do. I want us to journal and reflect on this. Write about someone who wronged or hurt you right now. I know. Thanks, Rawson. Great. It's already a really nasty day, and you want us to go a little deeper? I do, because I'm not afraid, so let's not be afraid. I want you to write about a time when someone wronged or hurt you, and if you were able to forgive them. Why or why not? If you were, how did you find a way to forgive them, and what was the result? If not, is the person still in your life? I want you to describe the relationship now. So I don't know how to. Has anybody had to forgive someone and they didn't want to? Or have they chosen not to forgive someone? Okay, let's go back then. If nobody's feeling comfortable enough to share, let's go back to here. Who is forgiveness for? Who do you forgive for? Do you forgive for the other person, or do you forgive for yourself? What do you think?
I think you forgive for yourself, because I feel like forgiveness can provide closure to a wound. It can't heal unless it's clean, and if you don't forgive, then a lot of times it just festers until you don't notice it anymore, and it affects the rest of your life.
So what you're saying then is that in order to heal, we need some sort of closure. And that closure is this. So what is forgiveness? What has forgiveness looked like for you, Sadie? How do you forgive? Do you say it in your head? Do you tell the person? Do you feel it in your heart? Do you know what I'm saying? What does it look like?
I think it's on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
I mean, there's some people that you can't look them in the eye and tell them you forgive them, but you kind of just move on and you understand that you don't hold any hate towards them.
And sometimes it takes time, right? I think that if we look at what happened in South Africa, right? The fact that an entire group of people was trying to was dehumanizing, right, and oppressing another group of people, that's a wound that is deeper than many of us can even comprehend in this room, right? But forgiveness allows us the opportunity to not be controlled by someone else or something else, right? I think healing, right, this word that Sadie is using, right, it also means freedom for us, right? And the capacity to continue living our lives and to not be riddled by anger, doubt, right? And also not to be inhibited or hindered by this thing any longer. Good. Any other thoughts on healing or forgiveness? Yeah.
Melanie said that she'll share.
She said what?
She can share something.
Yes. Oh, Mel, that'd be great. Yeah, go for it. Can you turn her on?
Okay, so my dad and mom have been divorced since I was really young, and he's been with his current fiance. They've been on and off for, God, I don't know how many years. I was in 5th grade back when they got together. And I don't really have a specific way that she had wronged me in the past, because there's been multiple times, so I'm not really going to talk about a specific one, but just my siblings and me have no blood relation to her, and she always treated her kids a lot better than she treated us. And there was even a time where she was saying that I was things that I wasn't. And it was really hard to forgive her, because even now my dad's still with her, and they plan to get married next year finally. And it's definitely not easy, but I know that I have to do it because it's something that my dad's happy with her. And even though she's done wrong to me and my family plenty of times, if it's going to make him happy, then I have to kind of move on. And she's also changed a little bit since she's gotten on medications. I think that's helped her kind of stabilize her mood and personality a little bit better.
Yeah.
That's pretty much most of what I have.
Thank you for sharing. I actually really appreciate it. It also makes me think too, Mel, what you're saying she's probably never apologized to you for anything she's done. She probably doesn't even know, I would imagine, correct?
She's
saying
nodding,
yes. Yes. So I want us to also think about the fact that forgiveness is not necessarily contingent on an I'm sorry. Because the person who wronged you may never know, right? And you may never have an opportunity to say to them, you really hurt me, right? But it's not about that person anyway, right? This whole life experiment that we're doing is about us, right? And being able to free ourselves up to live fully in this body, right? And so often then, the challenge of this reading for today, right, is that often, right, in order to be able to see our dreams realized and to become ourselves fully, it takes us being able to release and let go people who could otherwise inhibit us, prevent us from being our full selves. I hope you guys hear what I'm saying today. Without sharing my own personal anecdotes, I have had to forgive a number of people in my life for really painful things, but it has been the only way that I've been able to truly realize my full self, right? And we're all, I think, on a journey to do that. So let's do this. I want to jump, you guys, so next Thursday you're taking your exam, okay? I want to make sure, right, we talked about this, I want to make sure that everybody's ready. So one of the things that we're going to be, that I'm going to be asking you about in the first section of the exam, and I'll talk on Tuesday how the exam's laid out. But in the first section of the exam, I'm going to ask you what are the themes, some of the themes or tropes that we've discussed in Genesis, right? So what are the themes or tropes that we've discussed in Genesis so far? What are the things that keep coming up? And then I want to ask you where there are examples of those in the text, right? This thing that is repeated. So can anybody right now, off the top of your head or also looking at your notes, tell me a theme or two that you have seen so far, that we've seen so far?
Sibling rivalry.
Yeah, baby. All right, give us examples.
Jacob and Isaac, or Isaac and Ishmael,
Good.
Jacob and Esau,
Good.
Joseph and his brothers.
Good. Beautiful. Also, I would even say Leah and Rachel maybe, right? We could add that too. Okay, good. Sibling rivalry. What else? Come on, y'all.
Brock said forgiveness.
Said what? Brock said forgiveness. Beautiful. Absolutely. So we've got this, absolutely, we've got a huge theme, especially right here at the end. Whereas, and this is kind of a juxtaposition, right? We've got a bunch of sibling rivalry throughout the text. But you could even say forgiveness happens with Jacob and Esau, right? So forgiveness now is coming up really strong here near the end of Genesis. What else?
Melanie said favoritism.
Favoritism, absolutely, favoritism, right? And the way in which favoritism also, who's favored in the text, also influences who we side with in the text, and even in our lives, right? So for the most part, if we look at this side of the family tree, right, in the Bible, this is the favored side, right? And then we got Jacob over Esau, who's favored, right? We got Joseph over all his brothers who are favored, right? Good, beautiful, Mel, yes. So favoritism, again, the way in which favoritism or chosenness also influences how we interpret the text. If we feel that we are favored or want to be favored, right, we might lean more to this side. If we feel that we have been outcast or othered, we might, like with Janice Dwight, lean more toward this side. Okay, others. Anybody else?
Fighting for God's blessing.
Yes, good. So fighting over the blessing. Who gets it? Who doesn't get it? Good. So fighting over specifically God's blessing, the fact that we've got this conflict that Claire Amos would say, listen, this is still affecting us to this day, this idea of who gets the blessing, right? And trying to prove yourself as the one who is chosen by God. What else?
Brock says stranger or alien.
Yes, Brock. Good. I was waiting for somebody. Good. So the idea of strangers or aliens, right? And I would say then to intimately connected to that, what? Not just strangers and aliens, but what also?
Treatment.
Yeah, the treatment of them, right? Are you hospitable or not? And we saw this in also in Sodom and Gomorrah, right? A text that we thought has traditionally been about homosexuality, which actually doesn't mention anything about men desiring to have sex with other men. It actually says in Ezekiel, the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah is that they didn't know how to treat people who were in need, right? That's the sin. Okay, good. What else?
Brock
Anything
said
else?
barren women.
Brock, you're kicking it. Yay! Okay, good. So we've got tons of barren women. Where are the examples? Who was barren?
Rachel.
Good. Rachel. Who else? Rebecca. Good. Sarah. Over and over and over again. I can't have a baby. Is God going to give me a baby? Boom! God gives you a baby. Okay, good. So also then, in this trope of barren women, we also have God's provision, which I want us to think about too as we continue to think about, or as we continue to reflect on Genesis, how many times Abraham and Isaac and others questioned God and were concerned, and then God provides, right? Even in that story about child sacrifice that then we see explains why Israel no longer sacrifices children, but now, and this is in the Christo Lombard essay, but now they use animal sacrifice instead. Good. Here they are, you guys. What about deceit, lying, and trickery? Cause and effect, there's one. One of the things we didn't actually talk about, that we'll talk about misrecognition today, is the trope of woman versus woman, and that's going to come up even stronger, right? Rachel versus Leah, Sarah versus Hagar. There's a way in which the text represents women as being in competition, and they're often in competition for what? For what? In competition for what in the Bible? Often. Yeah, absolutely. For a man's attention, for a child, good. Strangers, aliens, sojourners, sibling rivalry. We see also this a trope of enslavement over and over again, right? That you're going to be enslaved, but I've still chosen you. We also see inversions of the youngest over the oldest, the weaker over the stronger. We too see Israel versus Canaan, right? Which is also Israel versus, Judaism versus Islam, unfortunately, as we've seen. And then forgiveness, which is that one that Brock said. Okay, so here's what I want us to do. I'm going to put you guys in breakout rooms. I'm also going to ask you guys that are in this room to sit together. What we're going to do is we're going to talk through the text. What I would like for you in your group to do is summarize the plot line. Oh, 1 second, I'm not going to open. Summarize the plot line, if you can, in 5 sentences. I'm going to leave these questions up to help you. But in groups of 2 or maybe 3, I want you to just summarize it really quick. Here's what I read for last night in the Bible. Boom, 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 boom. Here are the major things that I picked up, right? So this is the world inside the text. I want to see how closely you're reading to see these different things, because if you'll notice, right, a lot came up. We saw rape, we saw prostitution, we saw, exploitation. A brother was sold into slavery. So let's go ahead. I'm going to open the rooms right now. And okay, what happens? We can do it together. Number 1, what's the first thing you picked up in the story? Joseph has a dream. Is that the first thing that happens in what you read today? Hold on, Nick. Say it louder. Let me hear you. Okay, so Joseph has a dream to rule over brothers. All right, was there anything that you read before that? Did anybody read a story before that at all?
Dinah got raped.
Dinah got raped. And then what happened?
Her brothers.
The brothers killed her.
The brothers did what?
Killed everyone.
The brothers killed her. The brothers killed the man who raped her.
Yes, not her. Exactly. So that's very important. So the brothers take vengeance, right? And they end up killing the men who, this is stuff, I feel like I'm talking to God. They end up killing the men who raped her. How? What did they use to do so? Well, okay, yeah, I mean literally. Okay, so yes, they used swords. But how did they get them in a place that was compromised so that they could kill them? Circumcision. They were like, oh, if you want to have our daughter and you want to marry with us, you have to be circumcised. And then what did they come do while they were circumcised and still recovering? Okay, so Dinah's raped and the brothers take revenge. Good, beautiful. All right, I mean, it's not really, but you know what I'm saying. You guys got it. Okay, so Dinah's raped. What happens next, even before Joseph? Next big thing. Another weird thing. What?
Oh, I was going to say God redeems Jacob, but...
Yes, absolutely God redeems Jacob. That's a part of this. We can put that one in here. So, what else? What about the story about prostitution? Did you guys pick up on the prostitution story?
Yeah.
I was like, prostitution's happening in the Bible? Go ahead.
Well, right after Joseph was sold away, it segues to Judah and his sons, and he refuses to God kills both his sons, and he refuses to have his other son marry the wife.
Yes.
And so she gets a son from him by tricking him into thinking she's a
Yes, good. Sadie, thank you so much, because I was out of order anyway. So he's sold, and then we have Tamar and Judah and the whole prostitution thing, right? Which is an interesting question, which I'll ask in a moment. Okay, good. So we got Joseph having a dream to rule over his brothers. His brothers decide to sell him as a result because they're jealous. We have this situation happen, and then what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we're over. But give me one more thing that happens. Maybe 2. He's thrown in jail. Good. Joe in jail. And what's he start to do?
Interpret dreams.
Woo! Good. So then what happens after he interprets the dreams? Boom, boom,
Pharaoh likes him.
boom. Good. So he ascends, he becomes very powerful, and then what happens?
His brothers come to him for grain.
His bros need him. They're like, we need you now. And then what does he do? Does he say, no, get out of here? I mean, there's a lot to this, right? A lot more than we're about to say. But those of you who know this very well, I'm really proud of you for reading so closely. But what ends up happening is he blesses them, right? He's put in a position of power. Good job, Nate. Way to go, Sadie. He's put in a position of power so that now he can actually help his family. We won't get into the rest of the details. Way to go. So, I am curious what you think about the fact that in this story, we have rape and we also have prostitution. How do you guys feel about all this? Get out of there. How do I make that thing stop? Okay, I can't. It's lit. What do you think about this situation with the rape? What do you think about the situation with prostitution? Does it seem that the Bible is actually, Judah ends up saying she was in the right, I went to a prostitute, she deserves this, right? What do you guys think about this in the Bible? Does anybody think this is weird? Any questions? Any thoughts? Sadie, what do you think? I'm curious because I know you love the Bible and know the Bible really well. So what's up?
So like in that time, if a woman was a widow without a child, she didn't have any heir to get her money. So like the idea of providing an heir to her was like for her benefit.
Yes.
So the reason that God was upset that Er's brother didn't provide her an heir was for Tamar's benefit. And then again, Judah didn't do that. So she was like, well, I'll do it myself.
Exactly. So here's what's interesting is once again we have, if we're reading the text against the grain, we have a woman, right, instead of being like, this is weird, what's going on? We have a woman who is taking her agency and her future into her own hands. So even as in the Bible, we have the endorsement of women as property, we also see, right, simultaneously, that women are actually taking their lives into their own hands and getting what they need to be empowered, for their livelihood, for survival. Huh? Interesting, right? So it's fascinating to see that in a sacred text such as this, there's maybe some contradiction, or maybe it's just paradox, right? Maybe it's just a holding of two different things to get us to think more critically about various perspectives and ways of looking at things. Good. So let's keep rolling. We're going to look at the essays in a moment. So Israel and Egypt, we've moved now into Egypt, right? And so the next thing we're going to do is talk about Exodus after this, right? What happens in Exodus? Because we see that at the end of Genesis, right, all the people are now in a place of privilege and priority because of Joseph and his dream, right? But things are about to shift once we get to Exodus. It's important to know that once we get to Exodus, there are no dates given, no Pharaoh's name. The only information that we have is the place in Egypt and the names of the sons and tribes of Israel. So here's what I want us to do. We're going to head back into groups, and we're going to discuss the Siebert essay. Right? So I want us to talk through who is Eric Siebert, what is his thesis, and what are his main points, right? Again, a huge part of this course is being able to sort of comprehend what we're reading and to think through it, and also to think about the ways that it relates to us. The other one is a little bit more confusing for most people, so let's go ahead and get through this one, and then we'll head to the West essay. All right, what is Siebert's thesis? Well, first of all, who is he? Who's Eric Siebert?
Old Testament professor.
Good, he's an OT professor. So what we know about him is that this guy talks a lot and thinks a lot about the Bible. So he's an OT prof. Where's he from?
United States.
From the U.S. Good. All right. Okay, so tell me what his thesis is. Somebody.
Forgiveness is a central theme of Joseph's story.
Good. That forgiveness is a central theme. If we're going to read this story, we've got to know this is the main point, according to Siebert. Do you guys agree? Would you say that one of the main themes of this story is forgiveness? Yes, yes. Everybody in agreement? What's another theme of this story aside from forgiveness, would you say? In your opinion?
Nonviolent resolution.
Nonviolent resolution. Okay, good. Anybody else?
Adversity to like success.
Adversity to success. Good. What else? I mean, I would say also staying true to your dream, right? Believing in your calling, right? I think that's another huge one for this. Okay, good. So let's talk through then his thesis. So what's the first point that Siebert wants to make to hammer home this point? What's the first argument that he's making? What does Joseph do in order to be able to forgive his brothers? How does he see things? Lauren?
He sees it as like that was God's plan all along.
Yes, good. So important, right? That he says, you, like his brother sold him, God sent me, right? What's the difference between this and this? What's the difference in framework between you did this, God did that? Jay.
But violence, you have no control over it, and it's just like you're chosen to do this.
Yes, precisely. It takes the power out of the hands of the other people, and you take power because you say, oh, no, I was chosen for this. Exactly. This is the same way then we could look at slavery and the way that Israel sees their enslavement. Because instead of saying, oh no, we were enslaved, and we've got essentially like all the cards are stacked against us, instead they say, God chose us for this fate, right? So this is a huge framework shift from, you sold me, right? You may have sold me. This may have been something you did to me, but, and this is a big old but sticking out there. God sent me as a choice for hope. It's a choice for purpose. It's a choice, right, to see something beyond the circumstances in which it has gone down, right? Okay, good, beautiful. So a shift in perspective. So what's the next thing that he points out? And it says second, right? This one's pretty easy to read. So first he does this, second he does what?
He provides for his family.
Absolutely. He provides for his family. That's how we know that he has forgiven them, because he's providing for them, right? If he had not forgiven them, he would resent them and he would withhold. Now, I want us to think about in our own lives, right? The difference in the perspective, we're going back over this one, between, oh, woe is me, and no, I was chosen for this. And the difference between, I'm not giving anything to you, and you know what? Out of the goodness of my heart, my being, my resources, I want to give to you. He says that is absolutely an example of how he has forgiven his family. What's number three? Third. How do we know that he's forgiven them? Because what does Joseph do?
His physical and verbal.
That's exactly right. They're physical expressions, right? Verbal expressions. Good. So they're expressions of his love and forgiveness. Beautiful. All right. Now, anything else that you guys want to point out that he's saying in the last portion of this essay that you feel like is important to understanding what Siebert is doing? Anything else in that final page?
I liked when he talked about how Joseph's story stands in opposition to a lot of the previous Genesis stories of sibling rivalry, and how it drives home that violence isn't always the answer to conflict.
Good. So what he's saying is, and that's what he says, right? This story signals a break in this cycle of violence. Right? We've seen a lot of violence up to this point. Once we hit Joseph, there's a significant shift. And in fact, Joseph, he says, the story of Joseph breaks the cycle. He says of hostility, mistreatment, and of violence. Beautiful. All right. So, in that sense then, Joseph's story is challenging a norm set in the scripture. right? Now, according to Mona West, Joseph also breaks other norms. This one's going to be a little bit more difficult, so we're going to take some time right now to get in our breakout rooms and discuss this, but here are the questions that I have for you that I want you to talk about together before we actually break down West's argument. So go ahead and head off into your groups. I'm going to put you guys in breakout rooms. I want you to discuss these questions. Did anybody think this was actually an interesting metaphor to use? Caroline, you're like, oh.
Kind of.
No, you did. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, why?
It was really hard to understand at first
Yes.
because I didn't really pick up on that while reading it.
Yes.
She definitely read very in depth to this.
Very in depth. That's exactly right. Yes. This is a very close reading, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, and she knows Hebrew. So the thing that I found interesting, so we'll go into essay in a second, but I want to point this out because if you don't know Hebrew, then you wouldn't actually know this. And her point is really fascinating. So here's the deal, right? This is what we read in the text. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other children because he was the son of his old age. And Israel, obviously, Jacob, right? Jacob's been renamed. And he made him a long robe with sleeves. So if you read that and you're like, yeah, whatever, right? Like, and the whole Technicolor dream coat thing, right? But here's the interesting thing. This word, ketonet pasim, is only used one other time. And here's where it's used. In 2 Samuel 13:18, she was wearing an ornamented tunic, for maiden princesses were customarily dressed in such garments. And the weird thing is, like at the very beginning of the essay, she just kind of assumes that we know that already. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Like she's like, okay, so the reason that he's so special is because he's wearing a princess dress and also his brothers were, right? It was like, okay, wait a second, you kind of blew past this one. So I think it's interesting that she's pointing to this text without going fully into it. What do you guys think about this? What do you think about this argument before we head any further? Because it's her argument is not contingent upon this, since she's using cross-dressing in other ways, right? But it is important. So do you believe, in your opinion, that because the only other place that this phrase, this idea is used, is in reference to a dress worn by princesses, do you feel that that qualifies this as cross-dressing? That his father was giving him a princess dress? What do you think? No. Why?
I just think it's a stretch.
You think it's a stretch?
They talk about how like there are misinterpretations or like different words in Hebrew and Greek can be interpreted as multiple things. So
Yes.
I feel like only one other time being used is a bit of a stretch. Like her point of cross-dressing as far as breaking boundaries isn't necessarily a stretch so much as like this specific.
Okay. So here's my question, right? The only reason that I kind of go, that's actually a really good point, is if there are tons of other words that could have been used, right? Like if you could have just used tunic or coat, those are already Hebrew words. Why did the author choose to use a term that is only ever used one other time, and it's only used in reference to princesses? Not all royalty. Female royalty. Do you hear what I'm saying? That's why I think it's a good point, right? Because if you have all these other terms that could be used, right, like a royal garment for anyone, but you choose to use the term that's specifically used for princesses, it makes you wonder. And that may be the only thing that we could sort of agree with. We don't have to think that he's dressing like a girl, or right, but just the fact that that's very strange that they chose to use that term. Why did the author choose that term? Okay, so just things to think about for you guys. So why then do you feel like he gave him this garment? Why did Jacob give Joseph this garment? What did it signal? Why did it make the brothers so angry? Why does it matter that he was given this by favoritism? Okay, so it made them angry regardless of whether it was a dress that, or used for prince or whatever, right? This emphasizes once again this theme of favoritism and sibling rivalry, right? So we've got this happening in full effect in this text. Here, however, right, we have a different sort of response. Okay, so now I want us to, we already discussed that. I don't know why I just said that. Okay, good. So, how do you feel about Mona West's argument? Comfortable or uncomfortable with it? And if we're uncomfortable, why are we uncomfortable? I mean, what's her thesis? Let's go there. So Mona West is who? We know that Mona West is what? How does she describe herself? At the very end, there's that little blurb. What does she do? Who is she?
She was a Southern Baptist minister.
Good. What else? Go ahead, Kylie.
Now serves as a director of formation and leadership development with community churches, and she's lesbian.
Good. Okay, so it's important to know that of course she would read this way. I mean, I shouldn't say of course, but right, we can understand the world in front of the text. If she's a lesbian, she's probably going to be reading the Bible from a position of the outsider, right? She's going to be like, you know what? Often texts in the Bible have been read as anti-LGBTQ, right? So she's in some way trying to redeem this text to make it inclusive for LGBTQ people. Got it? So we know that that is her MO. Okay, so she's a lesbian and she's a minister, right? Okay, good. So let's talk through her thesis. What's her thesis? What's her thesis?
Cross-dressing is used to break down the binary argument.
Bingo. So if we can get beyond whether or not this is about Joseph wearing a dress or not, right? Her real point, her main point, is that cross-dressing is used to break down binary thinking, right? It's trying to get us away from thinking either or. That's binary thinking, right? Someone is either male or female, someone is either masculine or feminine, someone is either Egyptian or Hebrew, someone is either a widow or a prostitute, right? So in other words, there is a blurring of boundaries. Right? Lines are being blurred, and that is what she wants us to see, and she's using what to talk about boundary blurring? Clothing, precisely. How you dress. She's also getting us to think about the way in which the LGBTQ plus community challenges those binaries, okay? So we're thinking about then both the way people dress in this, and we're thinking about how LGBTQ plus people do that. So that's the way she's using this. So before we start getting our panties in a wad, or boxer briefs, or whatever we wear if we're challenging norms, sorry, that was probably inappropriate and also kind of funny. I want us to think about, wait a second, if I step back, don't get myself offended, right? Is there actually a metaphor here that could potentially be helpful in this text? Okay, good. All right, so let's think through it a little bit more. Let's go, let's talk through her. This thing is not mine. Okay, so Nick said this, right? It's given to him to emphasize he's the youngest son, but he's favored, right? Again, another trope, another theme, the youngest favored over the older. Okay, so now I want us to talk about which boundaries were crossed by what characters. Who is she using to support her argument? Who in the text?
Joseph and Tamar.
Good. Joseph and Tamar. Because Joseph does what? He dresses, he's a Hebrew dressing as what?
Egyptian.
Good. He's also the youngest doing what? Doesn't she say this about the youngest and getting the blessing?
Yeah.
Yes, good. So he's also the youngest who gets the blessing, right? So in that sense, he's boundary crossing because he's the favored, and he's supposed to be, as the youngest, he is not the favored. Good. So what about Tamar?
Widow dressing as a prostitute.
Good. So she's a widow dressing as a prostitute to ensure God's blessing, right? And this is important to know that in all of these situations, these people are doing this in order to gain what? Yes, or power. I thought this was a universal sign for power, but I guess it's just me standing here like an idiot. Okay, good. So either God's blessing or power, right? Agency. And this is what she wants to point out about and how she's connecting it to the LGBTQ community, right? Because in the LGBTQ community, drag is used, right, first of all, to question and to problematize binary thinking. Why do we have to stay in these roles, right? Like, is it necessary? And maybe we need to challenge these norms because maybe they're actually stifling and they're inhibiting us from being our full selves, right? But it's also used in many ways to gain power, right? Okay, good. Crossing rigid boundaries of identity, necessary to take right, okay. So it exposes then, she says ultimately, and this is where I want us to start thinking about ourselves in this. Yes, okay, good. So it exposes a category crisis and creates, she says, a space of possibility to become an agent of one's own destiny. Hold on, I need to exit this. Good. How am I exiting? Oh, there you are. Okay. So I want us to, the last thing I want to do before we move on and sort of talk about this in terms of our own lives or experience, is what does West say then about privilege and passing, and what is a heterosexist culture? So just so you guys know, heterosexism would be what? What does that mean that society, like if society is sexist, then it means what? That men are over women. Good? So if it's heterosexist, what does it mean? So this is binary. What's over what? Straight over gay. Absolutely. Okay, so she says, you know what, in a heterosexist society, LGBTQ plus people use passing in order to gain privilege. Right? So what is passing?
Looking how they're supposed to look.
Looking how they're supposed to look. Good. So this is my question for you, friends. Some would call this code switching outside of, not necessarily within the LGBTQ community, right? This is something that people do regardless of whether they're straight or gay, right? It's something that marginalized people or minoritized people often do. If you're not a part of the dominant culture, right, or the dominant identity, you might have to use certain tools or resources, certain language, certain clothing, so that you can fit in and not be outcast, so that you can in some way survive, so that you're not constantly experiencing a barrage of potentially of discrimination or comments or, right? Can someone give me an example, or microaggressions? Can someone give me an example of how they pass or code switch or do drag, right? Metaphors. It can also be literal if you want. In order to pass, so that they're able to survive. That you can't speak the way that you want to, or that you can't, right? To some degree, many of you, even if it isn't on an intense level, talk a different way in class than you do outside of class. And you know that in order to survive, right, in order to do well in school, you have to talk a certain way, right? You have to wear a certain thing. You have to act a certain way that may not feel comfortable to you, right? So today, right, in reflecting on this essay, I want us not to think about whether or not West is trying to make us read the Bible as gay or Joseph is gay, because one of the points that she makes, which I really appreciate, is that Joseph is not gay. It's not about being gay, right? The point is, can we see this metaphor and understand, right, the ways in which it's challenging binary thinking and the way in which the Bible itself is getting us to think outside of either or categories, right? Which I think is really kind of a cool thing that she's doing. You know, and we might also feel really uncomfortable because she's a lesbian, and that's okay, right? That's okay, but can we bracket that and be able to see this perspective and try to understand? So before